Anna here from the Norwich South branch of Socialist Appeal, and today I'm going to be doing some baking because I feel like we could all use a little bit of joy right now. Um, so yeah, welcome everyone. I hope that everyone is okay and you're keeping safe, you and your families are doing alright, and you're all as safe and sane as you can be under the circumstances. So I'll just give everyone a few minutes to sort of join in, filter in, before we get started. So just to start off, I suppose, with some housekeeping rules. We are, after all, living in the middle of a pandemic. So you want to make sure that you've washed your hands, that your hair is tied back so that it doesn't get in any of the food, and you want to make sure that you've wiped down all your surfaces that you're going to be using to bake with some antibacterial, some Dettol, anything that kills all those microscopic nasties. The cake that we're going to be making today is a lemon and elderflower drizzle cake, and it's one of my favourite recipes. I've made it so many times. I love it. Elderflower is honestly one of my favourite flavours, and it's pretty easy to get. You can just buy a bottle of elderflower cordial just from the supermarket. There is where you can make your own using dried elderflower. You can get dried elderflower from specialty tea shops, but it's much easier, especially during these trying times, to just buy it. So let's start with ingredients and equipment that you're going to need. So to start with, you're going to need 150 grams of self-raising flour. Now, I know some people haven't been able to get self-raising flour. So what you can do instead is, if you're able to get plain flour, then you can use plain flour, but add a teaspoon of either baking powder, or if you can't get that, bicarbonate of soda, something like that, as a raising agent to help the cake rise. You'll also need 150 grams of butter cooled to about room temperature. You'll need 150 grams of caster sugar, and you'll need, this probably isn't going to work, you need 3 eggs beaten. So one of the reasons why I chose this cake is because it's kind of a basic sort of sponge cake, and for a basic sponge cake, essentially you need the same amount of everything. So if you're using 50 grams of flour, you need 50 grams of butter, 50 grams of sugar, 50 grams of eggs, and 1 egg is about 50 grams. If you're using 100 grams of flour, then that's 100 grams of butter, sugar, and 2 eggs. So it's a really easy cake, and that's why I chose this cake. You'll also need the zest of 2 lemons and the juice of between 1 and 2 lemons, depending on your taste. Depends how much lemon you want in your cake. You'll also need about 100 millilitres of elderflower cordial. Maybe a bit less, again, depending on taste, how much you want your cake to be elderflowery. You'll also want about 100 grams of icing sugar. As well as the butter for the cake, you'll want a little bit of extra butter so that you can grease your tin, which brings me to the equipment that you'll need. You'll need a cake tin. You'll need a cake tin. If you can't get hold of a cake tin, then any kind of tin, a roasting tin, loaf tin. If you don't have a tin, then you can always use something like a casserole dish or something that's oven proof, essentially, but just make sure that you line it with baking paper. It will probably affect the texture of the cake, but you will still be able to make a cake that you can eat and enjoy afterwards. Okay, so now that I've been rambling on for about 5 minutes for people to sort of filter in, I'll just say who I am and why I'm doing this. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Eleanor. I'm one of the comrades from Socialist Appeal Norwich South branch, and I'm doing this live bake along to raise some money for Socialist Appeal and also to spread a little bit of joy using what little talent I have. And so I decided to teach you all how to bake, or just at the very least create a nice video that you can enjoy at your pleasure. So this is a live stream, but once it's done, I'll download the video and then upload it to my YouTube channel. I'll post links afterwards, so that if you want to go back, you can do so and rewatch and bake along if you want. So yeah, let me know if you are baking along. And yeah, let's have some fun. So this is a free live stream for you to watch. I am here to spread joy and keep myself busy first and foremost. But it is also a fundraiser, Socialist Appeal. Our finances are taking a little bit of a hit at the moment because we can't go out on paper sales, we can't go out and do our usual fundraising activities. So some of the comrades socialism stops. So I am doing this bake along. I have a link to my PayPal in the comments section for this live stream somewhere. And so if you would like to donate some money to the Norwich South branch of Socialist Appeal to help us build up our fighting fund, every penny that you donate does go towards building the forces of Marxism so that we can achieve socialism in our lifetime. So yeah, anything that you can donate is really very much appreciated. So I think that takes care of all the formalities. There's a comment section somewhere. Everything is backwards for me. My director has the best sense of direction at the best of times, let alone when everything is backwards. So if you do have any questions about baking, politics, anything, then please feel free to ask me a question and I'll see if I can answer those as we go along. And yeah, feel free to share pictures if you're also baking along with me. And yeah, questions, comments, anything, just let me know how you guys are. Okay, so without further ado, now that all the formalities have been done, let's get baking. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to preheat your oven to about 180 degrees centigrade. If you have a fan oven, you sort of want to be knocking about 20 degrees off that. So 160 degrees. I don't know the conversions to Fahrenheit or gas mark. Does anyone still have ovens with gas marks on them? Anyway, if anyone does know the conversions, let me know. But yes, 180 degrees, 160 if you have a fan oven. Okay, so this is a recipe for a pretty basic sponge. So this is a cake that you can adapt not just to other drizzle cakes like grapefruit or lime or orange, but you can also adapt for any other cakes as well. You know, you could add cocoa powder for it to be a chocolate cake. You could add vanilla and all of a sudden it's a Victoria sponge. It's a really nice, versatile cake recipe, and it's really easy to remember because it's the same amount of flour, eggs, sugar, and butter. So let's see if I can position this so that you can see my mixer. Okay, now you don't need to have a mechanical mixer. I know that these are really expensive. I've had this one for quite a few years. I use a mixer because I have problems with my hands, so using a hand whisker or just like whisking it manually by hand is really difficult for me. But if you don't have a stand mixer, you can just use an ordinary hand mixer or an ordinary run-of-the-mill manual whisk. It will just take a little bit of elbow grease, but it's all the same. You will get the same results regardless of what you do. So we are going to take 150 grams of butter. We are going to tip that in, and then we are going to get our 150 grams of sugar. I don't know if you can see that, but that's 150 grams of caster sugar, and we're going to add that in as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to whisk them together. So you want to whisk them together until they're nice and fluffy. So when this is done, I'll show you what it looks like. So this is known as the creaming method with cake making. When you're making cakes, it's crouch down so I can see you. So when you're making cakes, there's two main methods that you can use. You can use the all-in-one method, which is, as the name suggests, you chuck everything in and mix it up together. That's really good for like a Victoria sponge. Or you can do the creaming method, which is what I'm doing here, which is where you put the butter and the sugar together and you mix that together until it's creamy. You cream them together, hence the name. And then you add the eggs and the flour afterwards. So let's just carry on mixing this for a little bit. If you are using a stand mixer, one thing that you do need to be wary of is that sometimes you can get little bits of ingredients stuck to the sides or at the bottom that aren't picked up by the whisk. So it's important that you just take a wooden spoon and you give it like a once over just to check that everything is nice and blended. So you can see there that it's nice and pale and fluffy and lovely and combined. So let's just scrape off the rest of the butter. There, waste not, want not. Okay, so now the next thing to do is to start to add the eggs. And you want to do that a little by little. So you don't want to add them all straight in at once. You just want to add some of the eggs. And then you want to get mixing again. And then once they're getting nice and combined, you can add some more of the eggs. And again, every so often, making sure that you are just making sure that everything is getting nice and combined. So that we don't miss any of the ingredients. So that everything gets nicely combined so that we have a nice, smooth cake. Now, one thing I will say at this stage is sometimes if your eggs and your butter are at different temperatures, sometimes the mixture can start to split or curdle. So if that happens, what you need to do is, first and foremost, don't worry if your cake does curdle, if your cake mixture does start to curdle, then it's not the end of the world. It's not going to mean that you end up with like an inedible cake or something. The butter will melt in the oven, so don't worry about it too much. What you can do is you can add just a spoonful of flour into the mixture whilst you're adding the eggs, so that it binds together really nicely. And then we just keep adding the eggs little by little. And if you are using a hand mixer or a stand mixer, you don't want it to be going too fast. And if the cake does curdle, just keep adding a few spoonfuls of flour. And some more eggs. Hello, if you've got any comments. Thank you, Lily. I also love these cat bowls. They're very cute. I don't know where they're from, but yes, I love them. Okay, so now that our eggs and our sugar and our butter are all combined, now what we are doing is we are going to add in the flour, and we are also going to add in our lemon zest. So this is our grated lemon zest. You want the zest of 2 lemons really, so that you really do get that zingy, that lemony flavour does really come through. Because we don't want this to just be like a watery, wishy-washy that kind of hints at lemon. We want a really nice lemon and elderflower flavour. Okay, so I've added the lemon zest to the flour. I'm just going to mix that. Just going to mix that. Okay, and so now, just like with the eggs, we want to be adding this a little by little, so a few spoonfuls at a time, and then just keep that mixer going. I'm vain, so I want to be in the shop. If you mean to turn your mixer off, make sure that you turn it the right way and don't accidentally speed it up. So once again, it's all starting to come together, but I've got a lot of flour around the outside. Don't know if you can see that maybe. But I've got a lot of flour around the outside, so I'm just going to get my wooden spoon in and just give it a mix so that I make sure that everything is nicely combined, because we don't want to find clumps of flour in our nice cake mixture, do we? Okay, so now that we've added about half the flour, what I'm going to do now is start to add the elderflower cordial. Now at this stage you want to be adding between 1 and 2 tablespoons. So if you don't have a tablespoon like me, you only have teaspoons, it's about 3 teaspoons to a tablespoon. So at this stage, I'm going to be putting in about 5 or 6 teaspoons of this elderflower, because I really, really like elderflower, so I really want that flavour of that elderflower to come through. 4 and 5, and that was about half a teaspoon, so there we go, a little bit more. There! So now that we've added our elderflower, now we can add the rest of our flour. So again, a couple of spoonfuls at a time, and then it's back on the whisk. I keep turning it up when I need to be turning it down. I'm blaming it on the fact that I'm left-handed, so everything is backwards for me. And again, just make sure that that flour is nicely incorporated. When you're mixing your flour and you don't want the mixer to be on full speed, you want sort of a medium speed, because we don't want to over whisk, don't want to over mix our batter, our mixture, because if you do over mix the flour, then what you'll end up with is you'll end up whipping out all the air that has been incorporated into that cake. And the taste will be exactly the same, but you will end up with a denser cake. So, just add some more flour. That is the sound of the washing machine being finished. And maybe you couldn't hear it, in which case I regret pointing it out now, but oh well. So yeah, again, on a sort of a low to medium setting. You don't want to be whisking it too fast. One day I'll mean to turn it down, and I will actually turn it down and not up. So there, just add the last of the flour. So one problem with these cat bowls, they've sort of got holes in where the feet are, so just have to pat down to make sure that you've got everything. Just going to give our whisk a little bit of a tap so that all that mixture doesn't go to waste. It ends up in our bowl and eventually in our cake tin, which is what we want. There we go. So, just going to get some kitchen roll, so that if there is any last mixture coming off, it goes on the kitchen roll and not on the mixer. So, I should point out that I am working in a very small space, so it doesn't matter how small, tiny your kitchen is, if you can find room to put stuff down on, you're room to bake. So, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to incorporate the last of the flour just by gently stirring it in because I don't want to get rid of that air. Okay. I'm probably breaking a cardinal sin here, but if you do find that you still have lumps of butter, it's not the end of the world, okay? It's not the end of the world because the butter will melt in the oven, and at the end of the day, this isn't the Great British Bake Off. It's just all about having a little bit of fun in the kitchen when we're feeling a little bit gloomy. So you should be able to smell that really lovely, vibrant lemon zest, and also that quite subtle smell of the elderflower. It's a very subtle smell, but you will be able to taste it, and it will taste amazing, I promise. Okay, so I realised that I should have done this at the beginning, but I'm blaming nerves. Now we have to grease and line our cake tins. So, like I say, I'm working in a very small space, so even though it's entirely possible, I do just need to do a little bit of manoeuvring around. So, I have my cake tin, and what you want to do is you want to, oh, got mixture on my hand, tastes good, so that's always a good sign. You don't get salmonella from licking the bowl, by the way, unless you've got a very sensitive stomach. Lick the bowl, it's really fun, I promise. So what you want to do is you want to cut out a circle of baking paper or parchment paper for our American viewers so that it can fit in the bottom of the cake tin. You can line the sides of your cake tin if you want. Personally, I don't because I can't be bothered. But it's honestly not a major issue if you don't line the bottom of your cake tin. Sorry, you do need to line the bottom of your cake tin. So if you don't line the sides of your cake tin, it's not a major issue. So what we want to do is we want to get, you can either get some oil with a pastry brush, or you can get some butter or vegan spread or whatever. And just make sure you've got a little bit on your tin foil, and just rub it on the bottom. Rub it on the bottom, and then if you're not lining the sides, this is really important. Make sure that you rub some butter along the sides. If you have a very shallow cake tin, then you can still use to make something that's a little bit taller. What you can do is you can either split the mixture in half and make a sandwich cake, sandwich it together with some jam or something, or you can get some baking paper and line it around the side of, might be helpful, line it around the side of your tin, but make sure that it's a couple of inches higher than the rim of the tin, so that when that cake batter rises, it's not going to overflow on your cake tin. So, if you are using pen or pencil to cut out your shape, make sure that the side that you drew on is the side facing down. We don't want that pencil pen markings touching our nice butter. Our nice batter, sorry. Batter, butter. It's all the same to me. It's not. Don't get the two mixed up. So, now that we've lined our cake tin, what we do now is we just pour our mixture, in. Just pour it in. Now, depending on how much elderflower cordial you put in, will slightly alter the thickness of your batter, also just how big your eggs were, how much you whisked it. But don't worry if your batter is a little bit thicker than mine or a little bit runnier than mine. If you're finding that your batter is too thick to even spoon into the tin, then what you can do is just add a couple of drops of water to the mixture, give it a whisk or a stir. Again, not too hard because we don't want to knock all that air out. Give it a stir and pop it in. So I have one cake, but if you are doing a sandwich cake, then by all means. So there. Make sure that you get as much of the mixture out as you can. Got my phone next to me and I keep getting a notification saying, oh, someone so-and-so has sent you money on PayPal. Thank you so much for supporting the fight for socialism in our lifetime. Yes, I'm stealing the slogan of Socialist Revolution, which is the name of our American section. So, there we go. Got a nice, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, maybe, there's a nice cake there. Make sure you just run the back of a spoon or a palette knife over so that it's nice and level, so that it doesn't rise in unequal, so it doesn't rise at unequal rates. So now all that's left to do is to just get the cake I'm home in Essex at the moment. I'm not in Norfolk, so I don't have my usual gadgets. So I've got a little bit of a dodgy cake tin at the moment. So what I'm doing is I'm putting it on a baking tray, just in case you start to get any leakage. So if you do have a tin that is a little bit temperamental, particularly if it's one of those clasp ones, do you remember earlier when I was showing you it sort of comes apart? If you do have a tin like that, then it might be an idea to just pop it on a baking tray so that we avoid any leakage, so that all the cake stays nice and safe inside the tin, and also it is a pain to clean the oven if cake mixture doesn't leak. So can't my oven gloves. This is going well, isn't it? So just going to pop our cake in. Now, depending on how deep the cake batter is, you want to leave it in there for somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes. So because my cake tin was quite wide and it was quite a shallow batter, I'm going to check on my cake in about 20 minutes. But it might take anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, or if your oven is a little bit dodgy like mine is, it might take a little bit longer. But the way to tell when a cake is baked is you stick a skewer, like a cocktail stick, or if you don't have a skewer, then a knife. You stick it in the cake, and if it comes back clean, then you know it's cooked. If it comes back and there's still a little bit of batter on, or there's some crumbs that are looking quite wet, then you know it's not quite done and it needs to keep cooking. Okay, so that's our cake made, but that's not the end, because we still have to make the drizzle and we still have to make the icing. So what I recommend if you're baking is that you start clearing up as you go, because otherwise it's very easy to sort of you get overwhelmed and you end up with all this stuff essentially. And my mother always says, tidy desk, tidy mind. And so in this case, tidy workstation, tidy mind. So I'm just going to move my empty, dirty dishes over towards the sink so that I can clear those up later, and so they're nice and out of my way, and I've got a clean workstation. So I hope everyone is having a great day so far. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to have a look and see if someone's got any questions. Haha, get that elderflower. Yes, Fiona, get that elderflower in. Elderflower is my favourite. One of my favourite flavours after violet. Violet is my favourite flavour. It's really hard to find good violet that doesn't taste fake. So one of the reasons why I use elderflower cordial and not like an elderflower extract is because it just tastes so much more natural and more fresh. If you use an extract, extracts are really good because it's a lot of flavour condensed into just like a few drops. So if you get a little bottle of, say, almond extract or vanilla extract or rose extract, it will last you ages. But the taste is sometimes compromised. You have to use an extract pretty sparingly, otherwise it's just going to be an overwhelming flavour. It's just going to taste kind of fake. Some people like that. Like, I prefer the taste of fake cherry to the taste of normal cherry, so I use cherry extract quite a bit because I like that fake taste. But just exercise your own judgment, and I'd say use them sparingly. It's really hot in here. Why is it such a nice day? Why is it typical that as soon as we've all gone into lockdown, we can't leave our houses, the sun has decided to come out? But I suppose it's better than being stuck inside and it's grey and dreary. I'm not even baking. This is so therapeutic. I'm glad that you're finding it therapeutic. Great British Bake Off is exploitative anyway. Fair. Thought there was going to be a here's one I did earlier. Well, I was thinking of a here's one I did earlier sort of for when I'm showing you the icing and the drizzling. But no, we're doing the real deal. We're doing the real deal. Any tips for veganising? Yes, veganising cake recipes. So, if you are cooking vegan, and I am trying to do more vegan baking, then the easiest one is butter. There are lots of like vegan spreads out there. I think it's called Vitality or something, and it works just like butter. You substitute it in equal quantities. Another alternative is to use cooking oil. So sunflower oil or vegetable oil are probably the best ones to use for that. I'm not 100% sure about the conversions. I'd have to check up on that. In regards to eggs, it's difficult to directly substitute ingredient like for like. I know if you're using egg whites, then aquafaba is a really good substitute. Aquafaba is, so say if you've got a can of chickpeas and you're draining them, the liquid, that's called aquafaba. And it whips up just like egg whites. So if you're making a vegan meringue, or you're making macarons, or a Swiss roll, anything that needs egg whites, then aquafaba is really good to use. And that is something that you can substitute in like for like. With regards to a sponge cake, that's not something that I'm particularly knowledgeable about. And it's something that I have been meaning to do research on, because I do hopefully at some point want to go vegan. But it's just about finding ways to sort of work around that and substitute. I think flaxseed or mashed banana is a good substitute, but a lot of the time there are actual like cake recipes that are made without eggs. So I'm sorry that hasn't really answered your question, but it's the best I've got for now. But you never know, if this live stream turns out to be really popular and we raise loads of money, hint hint, then I might do another one and I might do a vegan cake. So, you know, get donating. I'm joking. I mean, do get donating if you want to, but you know, no pressure, it's about baking and having a good time. So I hope that's applesauce. That's a good thing to use for vegan baking. Thank you. So yeah, everyone, if anyone wants to answer the questions that other people are leaving, you know, we're all in this together, and I genuinely mean that, not in a sort of, oh, we're all in this together, I'm stuck in my ivory tower, and you know, you're gonna have to go to work, but sorry, that's not to get too political. But yeah, we are genuinely all in this together, so yeah, by all means, help each other out and answer questions. Oh, we've got a new client. Yes, okay, so yeah, sorry Olivia, I don't think that was the best answer on the planet, but hopefully you'll be able to do some amazing vegan baking at some point, and you can share any tips that you get with me. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we've got about 10-ish minutes before I'm going to check on the cake. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make the drizzle. So got a plate. So there's lots of different ways to make a drizzle for a drizzle cake. You can make them with sugar, but you don't have to. So for this one, I'm just going to be using the juice of 1 lemon with the rest of my elderflower cordial. If you want to, you can thicken it up a little bit using icing sugar, or you could use caster sugar. What will happen if you use caster sugar though is it's a really nice effect. What will happen is when you drizzle it on top of the cake, it will start to sort of crystallise, and you might get little cracks in it. It's a really nice effect, but just be aware that if you do use caster sugar, that's probably what's going to happen. Because I'm using elderflower cordial, which is a little bit slightly thicker, it's quite syrupy, it's quite sugary, I'm not going to be adding sugar because I don't want it to be overly sweet. But if you do want something that is more sweet, then you can add in your doing. Okay, on the vegan question, we have from Thane, says the thing you replace eggs in depends on why the egg is in the recipe originally, which makes sense. So applesauce is good for binding. Hydrated chia, never know how to pronounce that. Chia seeds are good for replacing fat, and you can use vegan mayo to replace the adhesive quality of the egg. Thank you, Thane. That's really, really helpful and really good. So what I'm just doing now is I'm getting rid of some of the seeds, and I'm just going to squeeze my lemon. If you do have any like cuts or anything on your fingers, I do recommend you plaster them up, because if the lemon juice gets in, that can be quite painful. So you can use either the juice of both the lemons that you've used, or you can just use one, depending on what you want your elderflower to lemon ratio to be like. I'm just using 1 lemon because I really like that elderflower flavour, so that's the flavour that I want to stand out. So I've got the juice of 1 lemon. But what I recommend that you do, I'm just going to dry my hands. What I recommend that you do is that you taste it to see whether it's working for you. So just bear in mind that this is obviously this is undiluted elderflower cordial, so it might have quite a strong, sharp taste, but when it's drizzled in the cake, it will be fine, I promise. So yeah, I think I want a little bit more lemon, so I'm just gonna give these one more squeeze. It's an interesting sound, isn't it? Squidge, squidge, squidge. Oh, I'm easily pleased, aren't I? and oh, it just smells so lovely. And because I've already used this spoon to taste the mixture, I'm going to get another spoon so that I'm not double dunking, because it's not just me who's going to be eating this cake, it's my whole family. Well, apart from my sister who's gluten intolerant. But I'm making brownies for her next week as a sorry you can't have the elderflower cake. So my whole family is going to be eating this cake. Don't want to contaminate the drizzle, so get another spoon. Perfect. Perfect. So when you first do taste that drizzle, it's a very strong flavour because that's pure lemon juice and undiluted elder cordial. But I don't know. Yes. So that is our drizzle. And like I say, if you want to, you can thicken it up with either caster sugar or icing sugar. So let's see what else we've got here. Eleanor is the only essential worker. Thank you, Daisy. I like to think that I am doing essential work. Baking is really therapeutic. I find that sometimes it's a bit stressful if I'm doing quite a complicated recipe, like a macaron or choux pastry, but I find that it's a good stress. I don't know, it sort of allows me to sort of, all the stress that I've got bubbling, so I'm unleashing it all on this meringue or on this pastry or something. My hands are quite sticky because I've been handling very sugary elderflower cordial, so I'm just going to wash my hands. There we go, just to get rid of all the syrupy, sugary stuff that tastes very good but doesn't feel very comfortable on your hands. But yeah, baking is a really, really nice hobby, and it's something that doesn't have to take forever. I mean, how long have I been here? I've been here for 50 minutes. I've been waffling quite a lot, so if you're not waffling like I am, just stick some music on and you can have a nice, just relax, sort of, yeah, baking. It's really fun. I love it. I rate it. Recommend it. So yeah, I hope if nothing else, I've inspired you all maybe to go and do some baking, whatever it is, whether it's fairy cakes or sugar work, which is the devil's work, anything. Baking is really, really fun and therapeutic. And it's kind of keeping me sane in these difficult times. Whole fam. Okay. Okay. So, how am I doing for time? Okay, I've got about 5 more minutes before I'm going to check in on my cake. So, you've got the elderflower drizzle. I'm going to make the icing just yet. I'm going to wait until the cake is cooling before I start making the icing, because you don't want the icing to sort of go hard on the surface and you just have to crack it and mix it in. It's just extra work. So we're going to wait to make the icing for now. But thank you all for your questions and comments. So keep them coming in and I'll see if I can provide a better answer than the answer that I gave to the vegan question. But yeah, hope everyone's doing okay. I'd love to see you make sourdough starter and I've never made sourdough. I'm kind of new to the bread, sort of the bread game. I made my first loaf about a year ago, and I've sort of been focusing on kind of simple breads, like focaccia, and that's about it really. I keep meaning to make other breads, but I just really love focaccia. It's my favourite bread and it's pretty simple, and maybe I'll do a live stream of me making focaccia. You never know. Yeah, you never know. We'll just have to see. Because goodness knows how long we'll be in lockdown here. Can't use PayPal at the moment. Yes, okay, so if anyone would like to donate money but they can't use PayPal or anything, then just let me know and I can contact you and we can get some money for Socialist Appeal another way. Yeah. This is the bit that I didn't really plan. This is how you can tell that this is like live and uncensored. It's like the awkward waiting. I feel like you know that bit on Bake Off where everyone's like making bread and the bread is in the prover or the bread is in the oven. Like there's nothing that they're doing. They're just standing around, just waiting for the cake to be cooked. We need a focaccia tutorial. Okay. If this is a success and we end up raising some money, and if I can go to the supermarket and actually get some bread flour and yeast, maybe if I can't get yeast, I can do it like an unyeasted dough, like a flatbread or something. I have to see what we can get over at Tesco or Sainsbury's or wherever we can get to. But yeah, okay. If you thumbs up if you'd like a thumbs up if you would like a focaccia tutorial. Like thumbs up Olivia's comment if you'd like a focaccia tutorial because it's my favourite bread. It's really easy to make and it's delicious. It's delicious, honestly. Like best Italian bread, and there's some really good Italian breads, good French breads as well. I think Italian wins it for me. Don't tell anyone. Okay. Dispel myths of Marxism to fill the time. Okay. So I suppose that I think most of the people that are watching are probably comrades, but if you're not, then I am part of Socialist Appeal, which is the British section of the International Marxist Tendency. And we are a Marxist tendency in loads of countries all over the world, from Brazil to France to Russia to Pakistan, like all over the world, we're everywhere. And we are building the forces of Marxism, I suppose, so that we can see the successful world revolution where class society and all oppression is a thing of the past and everything is just great. I sound like the most utopian person ever there, but that is essentially our goal. And so if you would like to help us in that goal, then if you haven't already, then consider donating to the Fighting Fund or subscribing to our paper, which is also called Socialist Appeal. I'll post a link, or if someone else could post a link to the website. I can't type and talk at the same time. I have like one brain cell left and it's entirely devoted to baking at the moment. So you can subscribe to our paper, you can make a donation, and yeah, I guess I'm sure other people can explain it a lot better than me. I didn't really script this, as you can probably tell. But yeah, Marxism's great, and yeah, Vive la Revolution and all that. I'm a bit of a sucker for the French Revolution. Like yeast, we must rise. Harvey, you are absolutely right. The bread is rising, and so are the workers. There we go. That's a nice slogan. That should be the slogan of the Bakers Union. Like yeast, we must rise. You are absolutely right. We must rise. Just like, oh, that is the sound of the timer being done. Thank God for that. I was beginning to go a little bit mad. So, very long cocktail stick, but probably left over from a barbecue from last summer. So, let's see how this is doing. My oven is very temperamental, so we could have a few more minutes of stalling, but let's see how we're doing. How we're doing. Okay. So I don't know if you can see, but it's still pretty wet. Still very wet, actually. So that probably wants another 10 minutes. So I've got another 10 minutes of stalling to do. Isn't this great? If anyone else has any ideas on how I can pass the time, or if there is a myth of Marxism you would like me to dispel, then by all means let me know. Or if you have any more questions about baking or anything. Wow, we've been here for nearly an hour. Thank you for not getting bored of me. It's amazing. I like this live streaming thing because I'm always talking to myself anyway, but now someone's actually listening, so I feel a little bit less mad. It's great. So yeah, if anyone has any suggestions of how I can pass the time, no, I will not sing or dance for you. Then by all means, let's see if I've answered everyone's questions. Is anyone baking at the same time as me, by the way? Is anyone baking, or is people taking notes to bake afterwards? Aren't humans generally greedy? Why would you share your cake? Ah, yes, why would I share my amazing recipe for the best ever lemon and elderflower cake in the world? Why would I share that? Because, humans are inherently greedy. Well, first of all, I think that we can see from just to make it topical, from the response to the coronavirus pandemic, just the hundreds of thousands, of people who have signed up to help look after the most vulnerable people. That's not even talking about all the hundreds and thousands and goodness knows how many workers who are putting their lives at risk to make sure that we get better, that we have food in our cupboards, that, the doctors, the pharmacists, the nurses, the hospital cleaning staff, care home staff, all these amazing people who are putting their lives at risk to help us. I think that shows that, we're not all inherently greedy, and all the hundreds of thousands of volunteers. I think the government asked for, I think it was like 250,000 people to sign up. I think within one day they'd already smashed that target by tens of thousands, and by the end of the week over 500,000 people have shown up. So, clearly not everyone is really selfish, and, it's not just a few idealistic people saying, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we could all share and all get along and there's no oppression. But secondly, going on the whole human nature argument, well, our human nature is shaped by our material conditions, right? So if we are going to say, oh, humans have always been greedy, if we're talking in the instance of private property, well, that's only existed for a few thousand years. I think humans, or Homo sapiens, have been around for, I'm not a scientist or anything, but I think it's about 300,000 years, 100,000 years, a long time basically. And the time where we've had private property has been tiny, and the time when we've lived under capitalism has been even tinier. If we mark, say, the Industrial Revolution and French Revolution, the 18th century, that's sort of the start of capitalism. And I know it obviously had a longer origin, but we've been living in capitalism for a tiny proportion of our existence as human beings. And I did set my time. I had a panic. So if this is human nature, it's only been our human nature for a few hundred years, which, considering how long humans have existed, that's really not very long. And so our human nature is shaped by our material conditions, right? The conditions in which we are living. And so if they were to change, human nature would also change. And so not only is it wrong to say that humans are inherently greedy and inherently selfish, and that's why socialism could never work, it's also just wrong on a scientific, on a historical, on an everything basis. It's just totally wrong. And and I think Engels in particular writes about human nature really well. So that's why I'm sharing my cake. Essentially, that's why I'm sharing my cake, because it's not human nature for humans to be selfish, and even if it is, human nature has changed and it can change again. So yeah, myth one of Marxism. I couldn't because there's no self-raising flour anywhere. Yeah, I know, it's so annoying. Gluten-free flours are actually doing pretty well. Like I said before, my sister is she's got a wheat allergy or intolerance. I don't know which is the less severe one. And so I've been able to find quite a lot of gluten-free flour. So maybe try gluten-free stuff. You never know. The conversions are kind of weird, and gluten-free flour does behave in a slightly different way to flour with gluten. But that might be something to try out. Also, I'm sure there are recipes for flour. Excuse me. Make sure you sneeze away from the food. There are recipes of things you can make without cakes if you do fancy doing a bit of baking. Yeah, there's also things you can make without flour. Something like fridge cake. Fridge cake is not a cake, but you do use the fridge. It's essentially you melt chocolate. It's kind of a bit like Rocky Road, I suppose. But you melt the chocolate and you sort of thicken it with butter, almost like a ganache. And then you can put marshmallows, you can put cake, crumbled up biscuits, currants in, anything. Or there's also cheesecake. Again, you just crumble up some biscuits, mix them in with some butter, and then do the cheese top. There's loads of things that you can make if you don't have flour. Also, we can do things the old-fashioned way. I'm a historian and I make a lot of medieval recipes because I'm sad and I have no life, and they're fun as well. And a lot of medieval recipes for cakes say use breadcrumbs, or so just grate up some bread. If it's going a little bit stale, then you can use that as a substitute for flour. So there are ways to bake during the lockdown that don't rely on being able to find self-raising flour at Tesco. Okay, going to need a cornflake cake tutorial in time for Easter. I'm not going live again tomorrow. Cornflake cakes are amazing. You just get the cornflakes, you get the... I don't think I have the recipe for the stuff for cornflake cakes right now, but essentially what you do is you get your cornflakes, or your Frosties if you want them extra sweet, and you melt the chocolate. So the way you want to melt the chocolate is you want to use a bain-marie, or bain-marie, in my appalling French accent. So what you want to do is you get a saucepan, fill it with water, you set the hob on a very low heat. You want it hot water, but you don't want it boiling. As soon as your water starts bubbling, that's how you know that your water is too hot and you want to turn it down. So you want your pan of hot water. You place a heat-proof bowl on top, something like Pyrex bowl on top. You break your chocolate up into chunks, and you melt it slowly. You can also melt the chocolate in the microwave. It's much quicker, but if you do melt your chocolate in the microwave, it can burn. So this is a safer way to do it. You melt your chocolate over in the bowl, over the saucepan. You stir in the cornflakes. You get your cake cases. You spoon them in. Spoon the mixture in. You make a little hole. Pop a M&M or a mini egg or a chocolate egg of your choosing. Pop it in. Then you pop them in the fridge. And you wait for them to harden. And that's your cornflake cakes. So I hope you're making notes, because I might have the ingredients somewhere, but I don't have the time to demo cornflake cakes because I've got 50 seconds until I need to check that cake. And hopefully this time it will be ready. But yeah, Olivia, I hope you appreciate the cornflake cake tutorial, the lecture, I suppose, on how to make cornflake cakes. But cornflake cakes are great, and you can use any kind of cereal that you have. You can use Rice Krispies. You can use shredded wheat. I've done on my show. I assume you could do it with Weetabix. I don't know. But yeah, cereal, chocolate, mini egg, amazing. You don't need flour. No oven. Just need a fridge. It's a great recipe. Okay, so I am now going to go and check on the cake. Second time lucky. Make sure that you wipe your skewer clean. There we go. So make sure that you wipe your skewer clean so that you can tell when you take the cake out, you can tell whether it's coming back clean or not. Ah, lovely jubbly. There we go. So this time you, or maybe you can't see, but this time you can see the skewer has come back clean, it's come back dry. That's how we know that the cake is ready. And oh, it just smells of lemon and elderflower. So I don't know, will you be able to see? Can you see the cake? You can see the cake, and it's nice and baked, and oh, I can just smell lemon, and I can smell elderflower, and it's lovely. Honestly, elderflower is one of my favourite flavours. So what we're going to do now is, whilst the cake is cooling, now there's a few different ways to apply the drizzle. Some recipes will say you want to apply the drizzle whilst it's hot. Some will say you want to wait for it to cool and then apply the drizzle. It doesn't matter. Personally, I prefer to apply the drizzle whilst the cake is hot. Because whilst the cake is hot, it's going to absorb. It's the reason why you don't ice a hot cake. It's why you make sure that the cake is cool before you ice it, because the icing will just absorb into the cake. So that's a tip for later. Make sure your cake is cool before you ice it, because if it's a buttercream, it will just melt the icing and it will just collapse off the cake. If it's a water icing or a royal icing or any other kind of icing, it will just absorb into the cake. And it will make it go soggy and you won't be able to see the icing. So I'm going to drizzle the cake whilst it's hot. If you prefer to drizzle it whilst it's cooler, that's no problem at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our skewer again. We're just going to poke the cake. If you don't have a skewer, what you can do is you can use a fork, you could use a knife. Just make sure there's a few holes in the cake so that the drizzle has got somewhere to go and it's just not going to sit around the outside and flood the cake. So we're keeping the cake in the tin for now, because we don't want the liquid to just drizzle everywhere. We want it to stay in the cake. So what we do is we've got our drizzle and take a spoonful, and as the name suggests, we just drizzle over the cake. Now, you're going to need to use your own judgment here, and also part of it comes down to personal taste, right? How sort of moist you want the cake to be. Because you don't want your cake to be all stodgy and wet, because that's not going to be a very nice texture, but at the same time you do want to really sort of make sure that there is some nice drizzle there so that we really get that lemon and elderflower flavour. So I'm just drizzling as I go, making sure that I'm covering the whole cake, because I don't just want the centre to be tasting of undiluted elderflower cordial and the rest just tastes a bit bland. We want to make sure that that drizzle is going everywhere. Oh, just so good. I have so much love for elderflower. Every time I cook with elderflower, I'm reminded of how much I love it. One of my favourite medieval desserts is called a sambucade, It's a type of cheesecake. It's made with elderflower and rose water, and it's just beautiful. It's a gorgeous pie thing, cheesecake. It's just glorious. The good thing about a drizzle cake as well is if you've slightly overbaked the cake and it starts to go a little bit dry, then the drizzle can rectify that. It can add some moisture in and help disguise that sort of overbaked flavour. So I really do like my cakes moist and with a lot of elderflower and lemon. So I'm gonna not use the whole thing, get a lot of that drizzle in there. Okay, so what we do, I don't have fancy cameras with different angles and stuff. I am just using a laptop. We're DIYing this. So now what you want to do is you want to leave the cake to cool in its case, just so that if there is any extra moisture, it doesn't go everywhere. So, sorry, my throat is so dry. I've been talking for too long. I'm not used to talking for so long. Better. So normally I would say leave the cake to dry naturally. You would want to keep the cake in its case for about half an hour, and then you would want to take it out of its case and leave it to dry completely. So that's what I'm gonna do, is I'm just gonna leave it to dry in its case for a little bit. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna make, excuse me, sorry, we're gonna make the icing. So I don't know, can you see that okay? There we go, that should be better. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make the icing. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the leftover drizzle. We may need to make a little bit more. And some icing sugar. Now we're just going to make a simple water icing. And a water icing is just icing sugar with a liquid. In this case, lemon juice and elderflower cordial. You can use water, you can use any kind of juice to give it a flavour. There are other types of icing. There's royal icing, which has egg whites mixed into it, or aquafaba if you're going for the vegan option. But I like water icing because it's really simple. I don't want to be wasting egg whites, not wasting egg whites, wasting, I suppose, by making royal icing. So we're just gonna pop our icing sugar in, and you can probably see the icing sugar smoke is going everywhere. So for this, it's not so important that you measure it. As you can see, I've just chucked it in. And water icing is a bit of a guessing game. You sort of, 1 minute you've got too much icing sugar, 1 minute you've got too much liquid, and it's a nightmare. So what we're going to do now, we've got the banana bread. So many people are making banana bread, which is great. Obviously, all baking is great. Okay, so I'm just going to add little by little this liquid and see how we get. So, sort of gradually coming together. is the icing. This does take a little bit of elbow grease. Oopsie daisy. I've got bottles of wine under there, or a bottle of wine I should say, under the table, and I've just kicked it. So this is sort of, no, you want that a little bit thicker actually. So you don't want it too thick that it's just going to stay on top of the cake when it's done. But obviously you don't want it so thin that it's going to end up falling over the sides. You may remember that in the profile picture, I suppose, for this event, I had a picture of a lemon and elderflower cake that I made a few months ago. And that icing was far too thin. It was just falling. It's just falling down the sides of the cake. So that's a consistent. We probably want some more icing sugar. As I say, a lot of water icing. It's just trial and error. Add a bit more icing sugar, and this is probably going to be far too thick now, so I'll probably have to add a little bit of liquid, but that's okay. But well, why is everyone making banana bread? Is there a thing that I've? Yeah, that's far too thick. Is there a thing that I've missed? Is there a thing with banana bread? Have I missed? Is it just a thing that people like to make? And I don't like bananas, so it's a bit. Well, I don't mind. I do quite like banana bread. I'd rather make lemon cake, but I don't mind banana bread. It's quite nice, but as I say, not a huge fan of banana. Oh God, I've had it way too much. It's the thing with having dodgy hands, your hand gives way, and suddenly you've poured in too much. Actually, I reckon that's just right. Actually. A little bit more icing sugar. But yeah, water icing is fantastically easy. It just takes a little bit of patience to get it just right. To get it Goldilocks, I suppose. Okay. Yeah, this is sort of the thickness that we want. It's leaving a train. It is flowing, but it's not so thick that it's just going to sit on top of the cake. Now, I'm realising now that I should have done here's one I made earlier, sort of Blue Peter type thing. Because as I've just said, you can't put icing onto a hot cake. So, you're going to have to imagine me just putting the icing on the cake. And thankfully, this is the easiest bit. So I'm going to get the cake and I'll mime it, I suppose. For your amusement, for no other reason. So I've got my lovely cake. Lovely cake here. And what you want to do, just want to get a spoonful of icing, just want to drop it on, and then, well actually, first of all, what might be a good idea is if you get this thing out of its tin. So what you want to do to get this out of its tin is you can take a knife, or I've just reached for a cocktail stick because it's the nearest thing with me. You just want to make sure that it's coming away from the sides so that it's not going to get stuck. And then if you've got a cake like mine, you just want to undo the clasp and lift the rim up. Otherwise, you want to turn it upside down and just give it a gentle pat until it comes out. And then you want to, so that's after about 30 minutes of cooling inside the tin. Then take it out of the tin and then leave it until it's cooled completely. And then once it's cooled completely, you can put the icing on. Because remember, if you don't wait until it's cooled completely, the icing will just absorb into the cake and it's just going to be stodgy and wet and not a very nice texture. So, easiest bit, take a spoonful of icing, you plop it on, and you just make sure that the cake is all nicely covered. And I will be sure to post a picture of the cake once it's completed. And that's it. That's how you make a lemon and elderflower drizzle cake. I hope that you've enjoyed this live stream. I will post links to Socialist Appeal in the comment section afterwards, and I will download this video and then upload it to my YouTube channel so that you can watch it again at your pleasure. Why you would want to listen to me talking for however long again, I don't know. But if you want the recipe and some of my witty comments, then by all means feel free to watch at your pleasure. But if anyone has any final questions, then I can take some final questions or comments. And I hope you enjoyed this live stream. As I say, it's the first time I've ever done anything like this, and totally unscripted and 100% live. So I don't really know what I'm doing, apart from the baking. I know what I'm doing there. Yeah, I forgot to say at the beginning, disclaimer, I'm not a professional baker. I've had no professional training or anything. I'm just a Marxist who loves to bake. But you probably knew that anyway. So yeah, there are no final questions or comments, and let me know if you'd like me to do another live stream. Maybe next week or the week after. I could do biscuits, I could do bread. Focaccia seems to be quite popular. Or pie, pastry. If I know how to make it, I could do a live stream for you guys. So yeah, just let me know in the comments what you thought of this live stream. Don't shout abuse at me, I'm a sensitive soul. But if there's something that you think I could do better next time, then just let me know kindly. And yeah, keep baking, keep surviving the quarantine. We'll get through this, guys. I'm proud of you all. And keep donating to Socialist Appeal so that we can build the forces of Marxism and achieve socialism in our lifetime. Thank you very much, everyone. Just let my hair down, literally and metaphorically. And yeah, thank you all. I hope you had a good time. I certainly did. This was really fun. And if you would like me to do another live stream, then yeah, let me know and request some things that you'd like to see me bake and teach you how to bake. So yeah, hope you all have a wonderful weekend and happy Easter if you celebrate that, or Passover and as well. Remain indoors, stay safe, look after yourselves and your loved ones. I hope you're all right. And yeah, message me, donate, but you can't donate through PayPal or don't want to donate through PayPal. And links and everything you should need should you wish to check out some Socialist Appeal stuff, should you wish to donate. So yeah, stay safe, stay sane, and stay. Bye everyone, love you lots. Bye.